Good morning, everybody. I think we just lost David because I don't see him connected, so we're just going to wait for him. But while we wait for him, I would like to welcome Eva. There he is. Yeah, hold on a second. Yeah. David, I was just telling the viewers that we had lost your connection, so you can go ahead and start whenever you're ready. Hold on. Let's hold on for a second because, yeah, there he is. Open up your mic. There you go.
I got it. I'm sorry. I got booted out, but all right. Anyway, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the defense of Tamika Jones. She's here to present.
Hold on.
Is it okay? Oh, I thought you said hold on.
No, sorry, I was checking the transmission and I forgot to close mic. Go ahead.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. We're here for the thesis defense of Tamika Jones. She has translated parts of a text titled Sociedad Digital y Derecho Sociedad Digital y Derecho, excuse me, by numerous authors. It is an official document, book-length document, published by the Boletín Oficial del Estado, the Ministerio de Industria, Comercio y Turismo, y RED.ES España. Without further, I'd like to welcome everybody to this defense. And we're going to start off with a presentation by Tamika about her translation process. Okay, Tamika, you can go ahead now.
All right, thank you, Dr. Auerbach, for the introduction. I'm going to present my screen here. Present full screen. Oh, there we go. All right. I'll move this up. All right. Good morning, everyone. I first want to give a warm thanks to my thesis committee members, Professor Jane Ramirez, Professor Luis Garcia, and Dr. David Auerbach. Throughout my time in the Programa Graduado de Traducción, I have had the opportunity to take several classes that piqued my interest, many of which were taught by you all. Namely, translating academic texts and translating journalistic texts by Professor Jane Ramirez, Herramientas de Traducción by Professor Luis Garcia, Financial Translation and Legal Translation by Dr. David Auerbach, as well as Touring La Isla, the Language of Travel and Tourism in Puerto Rico by Professor Craig Barnes. Those are just a few classes that I wanted to highlight, all of which served as the reservoirs that I drew from when translating my thesis, which is why your presence here today means a lot, as each and every one of you played a part in my growth as a translation student. I want to give a special thanks to my thesis advisor, Dr. Auerbach. Thank you for agreeing to guide me through this process. Your leadership and mentorship was pivotal, and throughout the process, I grew both professionally and personally. Without further ado, it is with distinct honor that I sit before each of you today to present my thesis titled Digital Society and Law. All right. Sorry for that. About the publication. So when deciding what type of text I wanted to translate, I was searching for a publication that might be applicable and relevant to today's society. I wanted to translate a legal and technical-based text that was relevant. And I perused online, Puerto Rican bookstores. I conducted keyword searches in Google to see what material was out there. In search, I found myself on the government of Spain's website, reading legislative documents, and I found myself getting closer to what I was looking for. And at some point, I came across Sociedad Digital y Derecho. This text was published in 2018, and it is the first and only edition. I glanced at topics in the table of content, and I immediately knew that this was the text I wanted to translate for my thesis. The reason being is I wanted other audiences to be able to participate and sit at the table to dialogue about freedom and security as it relates to technology and governance. With that said, I was surprised at two things when I encountered this text: the fact that it had not been translated in English, and given that it is an authoritative, an official document produced by the government, such documents usually have their respective English translations. This one did not. And second, the length. This text comprises 992 pages and is divided into 46 chapters, excuse me. So by default, I had to choose very sparingly and strategically from many noteworthy chapters. So with that said, I handpicked 10 chapters and formatted it in a way that was progressive, beginning with a foundational understanding of the current technological landscape and ending with how technology has become integrated into today's society, such as, smart tourism. Right. So the objective of the text. This publication is informative. It's an informative-based text, and it's authoritative. It's also an academic-based text as well. It is written to serve as a reference guide and for readers affected by the constantly changing reality of today's current digital society. And it also entails research, as Dr. Auerbach noted at the beginning, of various authors, from renowned to little-known university professors to doctorate level researchers, think tankers, government figures, among others. Many of the sources were published in various places, some of which are written in English, but for the purposes of this text specifically, this text was translated into Spanish. Those sources that were in English were translated into Spanish since it was focused on the current digitized society in Spain. Nevertheless, the information in this text is applicable for any society that has faced a digital evolution in recent years. A driving force for this text is the European Union's vision to be a trailblazer and co-partnering with technology in the advancement of their economy and their mission to collectively govern the digital economy, leading to the European Commission's development of their digital single market strategy, which I will talk about a little later. All right, my inspiration and why I chose this text. I would like to consider myself a techie person. I like to integrate my daily activities with technology in a way that makes everyday life easier, such as Bluetooth capabilities, my Apple Watch, apps for banking, social media, and cloud-based technology. I like interconnectivity of technology to maintain friendships, do business, acquire, and implement knowledge in a way that is intentional and productive. I also like the idea of knowing that my personal data is secure and that I am personally secure. So as much as I love all these capabilities of technology, which makes my daily tasks seem seamless, how much of that information is being tracked by companies? Or are there those seeking to do me harm? So these principles were at the forefront of my mind when approaching this text. And they are at the forefront of my mind on a daily basis, rightfully so. And it keeps me aware of the various technological checkpoints that I encounter daily, that I come in contact with. So although what may seem appealing, but may have a negative effect, it could have a negative effect in the short or long term on me, depending on what apps I'm interacting with. Just by way of background, when obtaining my bachelor's degree, my capstone was titled "Cómo el bilingüismo puede aumentar la ventaja competitiva de una empresa." How bilingualism can increase a company's competitive advantage. I was fascinated with the ways in which businesses can remain competitive. And at that time, I focused on this business's Spanish and English competency. With this said, I've had the pleasure of continuing this theme throughout my academic journey, but have decided to focus on how nations can remain competitive when it comes to technology. Not only does language have the power to transcend barriers, but technology also has that same effect. It's a competency that human beings in today's society are confronted with, which has forced many to become proficient in a new language and essentially be left behind. And not adapting can cause other issues such as frustration, vulnerability, and illiteracy. All right, so challenges when I begin to translate this text. With this being an official government text of Spain, I was surprised at the roughness of the text. It did not appear that it was adequately or appropriately edited. I sought to preserve the integrity of the work by maintaining a high register throughout, but at times there were many informal asides thrown in, and I will show you some examples momentarily. It also appeared that parts were haphazardly thrown together. I was expecting the publication to maintain a more formal register in an organized fashion. It also made me, but on the positive side, it also made me realize my role as a translator, which was actually very useful, which is actually very useful when it comes to texts like this. As oftentimes as translators, we are the first editors. So essentially what I found myself doing was smoothing out the rough edges throughout. Prior to translating this text, I also want to add I was not expecting how challenging that aspect specifically would be. For example, there were passages that were roughly written and confusing. I alluded to some of this in my preface, but I wanted to bring in some other insight and show how I try to resolve this issue. All right. And also, I'm also going to be highlighting the other challenges such as word choice, quotes, and footnotes. All right, first I'm going to bring to your attention issues that I had with register and style. All right. Excuse the wordiness, but that is exactly what I intended for this slide. The top quote is the quote from the original, excerpt from the original text, and then the bottom quote is how I translated it. So, lo cual no significa que se deba rechazar a las tecnologías de la información en general y a las redes sociales en particular como instrumentos de opinión y de participación ciudadana. And then you have two colons, a colon. No se trata necesariamente de una mayoría silenciosa, pero sí es obvio que existe un silencio mayoritario. El porcentaje de ciudadanos que no intervienen en los debates rebasa ampliamente al que lo hace. Y de lo que se trata es de saber interpretar ese silencio. O, dicho a la inversa, de articular instrumentos de medida que permitan averiguar hasta qué punto la opinión expresada en las redes sociales es reflejo fiel de la mayoría social. Okay. So it was imperative to smooth out the rough edges here. As you can see, I took out the colon in the bottom part. So right after public opinion and participation, I decided to eliminate the colon. Also, I decided to add some M dashes. There were some N dashes in the text, but to make sure it coincides with English grammatical style, orthography, I added M dashes, and also I added a period. As you can see, it just kept going. And I saw this often. Actually, this is just, I felt like a good snapshot of how I try to resolve run-on sentences or choppy sentences to make it flow better. Another example is this one right here. This one I would say would be, you know, as I spoke about the register, there's a lot of opinions, asides that I didn't think was necessary. And at some points I decided to take out some of those asides, and at some points I decided to keep it in. Aunque en Europa la protección de datos se mantuvo dentro del contexto de los derechos fundamentales, el objeto principal de esta nueva ola de regulaciones fue buscar intereses económicos relacionados con el libre flujo de datos personales, afirmando una tendencia que aún está presente y que se ha reforzado aún más, si cabe, en los últimos años. Although the protection of information in Europe was maintained within the context of fundamental rights, the main objective of this new wave of regulations was to look for economic interests related to the free flow of personal data, affirming a trend, which is still present, and which will be enforced even more so, if possible, in the future. So here is an example where I did keep in some of those points, but you can see how choppy, you know, trying to remain faithful to that particular excerpt, just, you know, trying to communicate the author's intent there and not to subtract from what they were trying to get across, but just how it was written originally is just choppy. And lastly, esta es una idea que, por ahora, solo se puede dejar apuntada, pero que, sin duda, puede resultar, al menos en mi opinión, muy interesante. For now, this is just a noteworthy idea to consider. However, it can certainly be an interesting idea. So I decided to take out here some of those, without a doubt, in those areas and try to condense it to the best way possible. But like I said, these are just excerpts of what I saw like throughout the text. All right, the second challenge, word choice. As a translator, we are confronted with choosing the right choice of words. So I counted various meanings, and it's our job to choose the appropriate word in a given context. That's what I'm trying to say. So here, control in Spanish, which can mean control in English, but I decided in the box on the right, this is how I decided to translate it in my text. It can have many meanings. It can have supervision and other meanings, but in this particular text, I decided to translate control as oversight, and I'm going to show you some examples. Cliente or consumidor, I decided to translate it as customer, but it also can have other meanings, such as in the hotel industry or the restaurant industry, it could be client or even user. But in this particular text, I would say I translated client or consumidor as customer and user. Ciudadanos could mean citizen. However, yes, I did translate in some parts in the text, ciudadanos as citizen, but it was mostly used, I mostly translated as public in people, translated that word in that regard, and I'll show some examples momentarily. And then gobernanza, normativa, y regulación, they were used throughout. However, I found myself using regulation to just standardize that, because that's depending on the context in which it was used, that's what it meant. And remember, there's a lot of contributions from various authors, so a lot from different parts of Spain and around the country. So a lot of them are utilizing different words to mean similar things. And also some of the sources were translated into Spanish as well. So depending on who translated it, could be using a particular word. All right. So here we're talking about word choice. So the source text, in this right here, en este sentido, desde sus orígenes, la noción de protección de datos se basa en la idea de control sobre la información, como lo confirma la literatura de ese periodo. So, la idea de control. The translation through this arrow right over here of that, in this sense, from its origin, the notion of data protection is based on the idea of information oversight, as confirmed by various academic sources from that period. I decided to translate. I thought that oversight was a better term to be used, and say, instead of saying the control over information. You know, sounds a little unnatural in the English language, and information oversight, I felt best captured that meaning. Over here, este marco regulatorio se completó con la creación de autoridades independientes de protección de datos, con el fin de salvaguardar los derechos de los ciudadanos, ejercer el control sobre los responsables de tratamiento y reaccionar contra los abusos. So here, I have the ciudadanos, and I decided to translate this as, this regulatory framework was completed with the creation of independent authorities for data protection, which are aimed at safeguarding people's rights while exercising oversight over those responsible for processing and responding to misuse. So here we have control and ciudadanos in the same sentence, and in both instances, I decided to keep oversight when talking about ejercer el control, exercising oversight instead of saying exercising control. Just trying to maintain consistency throughout the translation. Also, ciudadanos, I'm gonna actually speak a little bit about that in the next slide. All right, ciudadanos. Why I translated it into either public or people. When this text mentions ciudadanos, at some points, yes, they were talking about Spanish citizens, but really I felt that they were talking about users that are residing within Spain and the European Union, not people who have their Spanish citizenship card. That became very obvious as I continued to translate parts of the text. For example, por lo que se refiere a los cauces electrónicos institucionales de participación ciudadana, la crítica generalizada ha sido su escaso éxito al no lograr niveles significativos de votantes. Translation. With regard to institutional electronic channels for public participation, widespread criticism has been leveled due to their limited success in achieving significant voter turnout levels. I translated it into public participation, as I did not feel that it was citizen participation, as it was referring to electronic channels, so to speak. But I just wanted to highlight that. Also, in the bottom left-hand corner, I'm going to read an example. La economía digital crece 7 veces más deprisa que el resto de la economía, y los Estados miembros van a la zaga de otros países en cuanto a redes digitales veloces, fiables y conectadas que sostienen nuestras economías y estén presentes en cada momento de nuestra vida privada y profesional. A la hora de comunicarse entre países, los ciudadanos europeos se encuentran hoy en día con costes diferentes, sistemas incompatibles y una conectividad irregular en todo el continente. So, here, I wanted to highlight just how I translated ciudadanos. I actually decided to translate it as users. When communicating between different countries in Europe, users currently face varying charges for use in incompatible systems, and irregular connectivity across the internet. Okay. Or continents, excuse me, across the continents. All right. So, cliente and consumidor, I decided to translate it as customer. I think this is the last example regarding word choice. Hay que dar siempre prioridad al cliente, aunque ello requiera tomar una decisión que reduzca los ingresos. Se trata de una estrategia ganadora a largo plazo, aunque el futuro parezca estar aún a años luz. Solo pensar en la idea puede acercar un poco más rápidamente ese futuro. Tus competidores te odiarán por ello, pero los clientes quedarán impresionados o como mínimo les harás reír. Always put the customer first. Even if it appears to require a decision that would decrease revenues, it's a winning strategy in the long run. Even if the future seems to be years off, just thinking of the idea may bring about that future more quickly. Your competitors may hate you for it. Customers will be impressed, or at least get a good laugh. This is actually a quote from a book. And it was a footnote, actually. So it was a footnote from an English based text from an English author, or English speaking author, excuse me. And this is how, and the source text was actually translated based off of this footnote. So by going to the source of the footnote, I was able to see that it was translated as customer, not as the best translation would have been customer and not client in this context. And it actually informed my decision in my translation. And then lastly, in the bottom quote, esto proporciona un conocimiento profundo de los clientes y en consecuencia un alto grado de fidelización. This provides profound knowledge of customers, and as a result, a great level of customer loyalty is given in return. So in the field of marketing and branding, customer loyalty is a common phrase that everybody knows. We've probably encountered that when engaging in just certain reward programs at our favorite restaurant, retail store, customer loyalty points. It just made sense here, not client loyalty, customer loyalty. Okay. I was wrong. It's the next one. And then lastly, gobernanza, normativa, regulación. Regulation, I felt was the best word to use. Estas preocupaciones acerca de las consecuencias que pueden afectar a la democracia digital y la gobernanza de los datos han originado una respuesta legal en muchos países. These concerns about the consequences that can affect digital democracy and the regulation of information have triggered a legal response in many countries. So instead of using governance, it's regulation. Makes sense here. And then, por lo tanto, en todos estos procesos que implican el tratamiento de datos personales, deben respetarse los requisitos fijados en la normativa de protección de los derechos de las personas en relación con el tratamiento de sus datos personales. En concreto, en el Reglamento General de Protección de Datos, Reglamento UE 2016-679. Therefore, many of these processes that involve the treatment of personal data should adhere to the requirements established in the protection regulations of individual rights regarding the processing of personal data, i.e. those outlined in the recently implemented General Data Protection Regulation, EU regulation. So I decided to keep regulation here because this is a formal, it's the actual name of the regulation, but in other respects, when not used in that way, I decided to translate it as regulations, or a regulation. Okay. Resources that I use to resolve these issues. Oh, before beginning here, I don't have a slide on it. Didn't necessarily need a slide, but I wanted to speak to it. The other issue that I dealt with, the two issues were footnotes and quotes. I spent a lot of time tracking things down for several reasons. One, because of footnotes and quotes. I looked up each source, as I mentioned. I had to look up sources in the footnotes to verify its accuracy. And I found several issues that did not seem to be, and for example, the consistency of style with the footnotes varied. First names of authors were not spelled out. It just had the initial. And it was imperative that I went to the source to get the full the full name of the author, especially that's required for the Chicago Manual of Style, which I use to establish consistency and uniformity. Also, with regard to footnotes, many of the links were broken since its publication date. So it was critical that I found working links so that readers can access it. Also, there were footnotes referencing the Spanish source, but I needed to verify whether that source, the original source, was in Spanish or English, or was that the translated, source, or translated publication from a English written source. And in many cases, the original source was in English, so I needed to change the footnotes, publication place, its publication date, and the page numbers, depending on what piece of information I was drawing from, and other pertinent information that needed to be cited properly. Which brings me to another issue that had to be resolved, quotes and sources. So as I mentioned, footnotes appeared throughout the text, the publication, and after certain points of research with regard to quotes, many of the citations, some citations had quotes around it, so it was easier to verify if there had been, where did this quote come from? Just going back to the source. And it was very helpful in identifying if there was already an existing translation of the quote. Some quotes did, and which would ultimately change the footnotes, and some quotes did not, and I had to carefully translate the quote. For those citations that did not have quotes around it, I had to investigate what part the author was referring to versus the author's statements about a subject. Sometimes the footnotes did not appear at the end of the sentence, so I just had to work with that. This was difficult as I had to track the sources down, as I mentioned, to ensure that the translated product was accurate to maintain the integrity of the publication as a reference guide. I mean, what's a reference guide without improper links? What's a reference guide with improper links and sources, right? You want to make sure that they're accurate. All right. So resources for resolution. These are some of the resources that I tapped into to help me, and I consulted with to help me in my translation. Archive.org, otherwise known as the Wayback Machine. Super helpful tool, as I was able to look at books to identify, for free, exact quotes and their appropriate page numbers. Investopedia and Technopedia. I use this to better inform me as a translator with definitions, plenty of definitions and descriptions on certain concepts. Amazon. Why I used Amazon to verify in what language or languages the book was published. Super helpful. Amazon, it just had the date, publication, various types of translations throughout the years, and making sure that the authors that were quoted or used or cited in the publication, matching that up with, okay, they're citing this book. Is this the book or the source? You know, is this matching up with what I'm seeing here? Government websites. I consulted several Spanish government websites per the citations given in the publication to verify whether there wasn't a official English translation. Just wanted to make sure that since I'm translating it into English, this text into English, that everything was uniform. Also pros.com. This was super helpful resource when I encountered legal terminology. And the Chicago Manual of Style, as I mentioned, this helped me with establishing uniformity throughout my thesis regarding footnotes and bibliography. So basically, there was a lot of corroboration in this process. All right. Application. Since its publication since 2018, technology has advanced exponentially. Some examples in this area: advancements in 5G, virtual reality systems, artificial intelligence, also known as AI, cloud computing, various types of engineering, you name it. Although relevant into all these advancements in technology are relevant in today's society, there are many aspects that can be added to this. I feel that there are many aspects that can be added to this text to bring it current. It is fascinating to see how quickly this whole field has changed in recent years regarding AI and the laws surrounding it. And in my opinion, this could be the reason, as I mentioned earlier, why I felt that it was not appropriately edited. This could be the reason why the text appeared to be put together so haphazardly, as maybe, one, there could have been a rush to get the information out. Two, it was not meant to be conclusive, but a starting point for future dialogue and for contributions around the subject. Or maybe it was meant to serve as a precursor to what Spain was planning all along, which is what I will talk about later in regards to current laws that they are pushing for. Nonetheless, this publication serves as a blueprint that other countries can follow when seeking ways on how to govern a society that is advancing at a fast rate technologically. So I would like to take this last part of this presentation to highlight current laws and the implications of the advancement of technology has had in Spain, the United States, Puerto Rico, and the world. All right. EU AI Act, first regulation on artificial intelligence. This is a headline from an article published on the European Union's website here at the bottom. And as part of the EU's digital strategy, the EU has sought to regulate AI to ensure better conditions for the development and use of innovative technology. They seek to they hope to establish an AI Act to better regulate this, and this AI Act that they proposed in 2021 would be the world's first comprehensive AI law. The European Union has recognized the benefits to AI, artificial intelligence, such as better healthcare, safer and cleaner transport, more efficient manufacturing, cheaper and sustainable energy. But they also want to make sure that AI systems are used in the European Union and that make sure that they're used safely, transparently, and that they're able to be traceable and non-discriminatory, as well as environmentally friendly. I would like to read a quote from their website. AI systems should be overseen by people rather than by automation to prevent harmful outcomes. So I mentioned that this act was proposed in 2021, and it would be the first EU, it's proposed as the EU's first regulatory framework for AI. And it seeks to establish different risk, establish frameworks and protections around different artificial intelligence that has different risks. For example, risk levels. For example, it's broken out into 4 types of risk: unacceptable risk, high risk, limited risk, and a risk that is intertwined into generative AI that I'll be talking about. The first one is unacceptable risk. They define this as systems that can be considered a threat to people, and these types of risks will be banned. They include examples such as cognitive behavioral manipulation of people or specific vulnerable groups. For example, voice-activated toys that encourage dangerous behavior in children. They also highlight social scoring, classifying people based on behavior, socioeconomic status, or personal characteristics. And also they consider real-time and remote biometric identification systems such as facial recognition as unacceptable risk. High risk are defined as those that negatively affect safety or fundamental rights. And these will be divided into 2 categories. I just want to highlight some of the specific areas that they highlighted: law enforcement, border control management, legal interpretation, education and vocational training, management, critical infrastructure, just to name a few. Those fall under the high risk category. So the risk associated with generative AI, the European Union highlighted ChatGPT. And they mentioned that though generative AI like ChatGPT would have to comply with transparency requirements, such as disclosing the content, disclosing that the content was generated by AI, or publishing summaries of copyrighted data used for training, designing a model to prevent it from generating illegal content. Those are some of the areas that they propose to put in place regarding generative AI. And lastly, limited risk. The European Union has decided that AI systems should comply with minimal transparency. And I would like to read a quote here as under limited risk. After interacting with the applications, the user can then decide whether they want to continue using it. Users should be made aware when they are interacting with AI. This includes AI systems that generate or manipulate image, audio, or video content, for example, deepfakes. So just wanted to talk about those, and I'm sure you guys are wondering, it was proposed in 2021, what was the outcome? So on December 1st, a publication came out just giving a status update on what the outcome of that AI Act is. And after 2 years of negotiations, the bill was approved by the European Parliament in June. They now need to be agreed upon through meetings between representatives of the European Parliament, the Council, and the European Commission. Right now, European lawmakers cannot agree on how to regulate systems like ChatGPT, and a threat to landmark legislation aimed at keeping artificial intelligence in check. And also, the article mentioned that negotiators are actually going to meet on Friday, December 6th, meet on Friday for crucial discussions ahead of the final talks scheduled for December 6th, which is tomorrow, to talk about the hurdles regarding the proposed AI Act. So that means that they met last Friday, so we look forward to seeing what the outcome will be after tomorrow's meeting. All right. Here's some, this is by Nuevo Dia, as you all know, Puerto Rican-based newspaper. journalism company. And I got this from an online newspaper, and the headline is Enormes desafíos en el uso de la inteligencia artificial. Así que there are photos of some examples of some deep fakes here. You can see like a fake image of President Trump getting arrested, or the Pope wearing a winter bubble jacket, and Obama sitting with a German Chancellor, Angela Merkel. Here, the article talked about the risk, like if not monitored, this could have some serious issues that could be detrimental to society. And also, if not monitored, it could mislead people regarding disinformation, and people will just not know what is true and what's fake. So, let's see here. Also, Spain is not the only country talking about this. The United States has recently just put out an executive order regarding artificial intelligence. So on October 30th, 2023, President Biden issued an executive order to ensure that America leads the way in seizing the promise and managing the risk of artificial intelligence. So what is the difference between an executive order and a law? So executive orders are issued by the White House and are used to direct the executive branch of the United States government. Executive orders state mandatory requirements for the executive branch and have the effect or the force of law. They are not statutory. It's just not statutory law. And a law requires congressional approval and can be repealed by Congress, which is not the case with this, with an executive order. For me, it is encouraging to see our federal government taking steps to be transparent and taking responsibility to better protect the public when it comes to the harmful effects of AI. Essentially, they are getting ahead of the threat. Here are some of the points that the executive order seeks to carry out. New standards for AI safety and security, protecting Americans' privacy, advancing equity and civil rights, standing up for consumers, patients, and students, supporting workers, promoting innovation and competition, advancing American leadership abroad, and ensuring responsible and effective government use of AI. And lastly, the ChatGPT generation. I would like to highlight this is the last slide in my presentation, and I have to talk about this. Sneha Revanur, she is the founder. She's a Transier, as she established herself, identifies herself as, who is the founder and president of Encode Justice, which is a global movement of around 900 high school and college students working to imagine a human-centered AI future. So here are just some of the points that I gathered from her video interview. And she highlighted how the benefits of ChatGPT, but also she addressed some of the negative consequences, such as disinformation, dishonesty, employment bias, due process when it comes to standing trial, and expectation of privacy. So I'm going to just highlight some examples that she also illustrates when she's going and giving speeches to make people aware just how serious this is. Excuse me. She said, let's say you're applying for a job, and there could be an algorithm that is determining what jobs you are even shown in the first place, which jobs you are even applying to. There could be an algorithm that once you actually apply is reviewing your resume. We obviously have seen these instances of algorithmic bias in systems that have been deployed by leading companies in making these decisions. So, employment bias. At the same time, she talks about, let's say where someone's standing trial. There could be an algorithm that is evaluating a person and their criminal risk that they're their criminal risk that they're posing as a defendant. Another example, expectation of privacy, like moving around in a public space, facial recognition cameras that could be monitoring our movements, that could be used to track a person's identity down. It's impacting everyone on every level, and it's essentially inescapable. Also, she talked about, the benefits, as I mentioned, academic uses. People are using it to boost productivity, and learning how to engage with new content. So there's positive uses there, but there's also risk, of course, of dishonesty, plagiarism. And also there have been studies that have shown ChatGPT to hallucinate. That I was deciding whether or not I want to talk about it in this forum, but I decided to leave that out. But it's essentially a reproduction of disinformation and glitching of disinformation. And there's been studies that can be proven to be beneficial, but also very harmful. And yes, that is a little bit about the ChatGPT generation. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tamika, for a very informative presentation. I'd like to now turn the floor over to our readers so that they can discuss your project and also ask questions or provide commentary in general. So I'm not sure who wants to go first, whether Jane or Luis.
Go ahead, Jane.
You're muted, Jane. You're muted.
Yes, I know. I kept clicking on the icon of the muted microphone, and that doesn't work. I have to do the unmute button. I'm not used to Zoom. I'm sorry. I apologize. I trust you can all hear me. Okay, good. I disconnected my earbuds, and that, of course, changed my microphone. So I hadn't had a chance to test it. Okay. Very nice to see you again, Tamika.
Likewise. Thank you, Jane.
I was impressed with the amount of work that you obviously put into this, with the research, with the presentation that you've just made. I can tell that you really got interested, that you were deeply interested in your topic. I have a few problems here and there that I think we need to talk about, but I liked your preface. The content was good. You chose the texts very well. They had a flow to them, which made it seem almost seamless sometimes, where it was obviously we were in a different chapter, and for all I know, a different author, and yet it sounded like it was a continuation of the previous thought. And that was very nice for reading. But I'm a little concerned, and you've been talking about transparency, I'm a little concerned about the fact that you didn't identify in your translation when you made a switch to a different writer, perhaps a different author, a different chapter. I don't know how the others. There were occasional references, like you give a chapter title that we could hear it, but I know right at the beginning, it slipped from one, I can't remember, and I probably am not going to be able to find it. But in the first section, it slipped from section 2.2 to a different section, and okay. I found it very hard to figure out exactly what I was looking at sometimes. And I wonder, and I certainly would like the opinions of my colleagues on that. I wonder whether anybody else felt like there ought to be more identification. Because since you skipped, and usually we have this rule about when you skip text, you put ellipsis points in there. Well, that would be constant ellipsis points. I would have liked to have had in the translation information about what I was reading, by whom, and what chapter while I was going. Maybe that's.
I actually did not feel that each section had its own author, so every time it changed, I knew it was a different part of the text. That was my.
I don't know, for instance, whether one author wrote each entire chapter, or whether there were various contributors to each of the chapters. I got some of that from the footnotes.
Yeah, but also every chapter, every section has a maybe if I don't know I don't remember if we got the whole text, but I actually downloaded from the website because it's a public document, so you could see every chapter was written by a different author and it's identified
in the source text. Yes, but the reader of the English thesis is not going to have the Spanish source text.
Yes, Jane, would you mind giving me an example? You mentioned in which section were you referring to?
As I said, there's a note about it in. Okay, I'm looking at I'm trying to find exactly what it was, but I wasn't planning on talking about that. So
yes. And just to address that, I did make an effort with the switch to different chapters, where you see chapter 1 or chapter 4, there's an author immediately below it, and their title, and whichever author is immediately below that chapter title is the author of that section.
Of that section, okay.
Yes.
So we had a section, we start out, okay. Well, really, let me get into.
Jane, did you look at the link that was provided to the PDF?
No, I didn't.
Okay, well, that would have really helped in terms of figuring out the organization of the text.
Well, but what I'm saying again, and if I'm sorry, David, I cut you off. I didn't.
No. But the thing is that there was a link to the actual PDF.
Okay.
And that is the only thing that's really going to make sense in terms of a source text, because the other Word document, it's kind of corrupted. It is quite corrupted from being converted, and but that's only to help you in terms of it's another form of navigation, but really the only navigating tool here is that PDF. So if you didn't look at it, I can see how you'd be confused.
But again, I say I'm not concerned about me being able to follow it. I'm a little concerned with. You said that name that comes at the beginning of the chapter.
Yes.
But you said that person wrote that section, not necessarily that person wrote the whole chapter.
Let me pull it up.
I'm thinking of if you were to publish your thesis.
Yes.
And distribute it, which would be wonderful because I thought it was cool, but very useful. But if you were to do that, the reader would not have, unless they're a Spanish speaker, unless they
she
don't know the
actually can't.
900 page.
He actually can, because of the copyright expressly says that it cannot be published if it's
Okay, but
altered.
in the
So
imaginary world in which we would like to publish all of our theses.
No, just
Okay, well,
to clarify something, we're not talking about section, we're talking about chapters. The only reference that we have is at the beginning of the chapter, and presumably that is the author for the entire chapter, not section.
okay. I'm sorry, but Tamika herself just said he's the one who wrote that section. That's
Well,
why
no,
I'm
I meant, excuse
trying
me,
to clarify this.
I'm sorry, I meant
Okay, chapter.
the
All right.
chapter, the chapter in the section of my
Mhm.
translation. So wherever you see an author under the chapter, you have the corresponding sections, 3.2, 1.2, so have you.
Okay,
That
that helps.
exactly how it appears in the source text. So you have the chapter, and then you have 1.1 to 7.1. And that author that is stated at the beginning of the chapter is presumably the author of the whole
Okay.
chapter and its the following sections. So
Okay, well, I'm not suggesting that you go drastically change your thesis and that you have to add this. I just am mentioning it, but nobody's bothered by the fact that there's no indication of when we skip text. I mean, we know it's happening because we see section 2.2 at the beginning, so we know we didn't start right at the beginning, but usually we identify when
I
we're
don't
skipping
find it a
text.
problem, because it's
Okay.
I think she explains it in
All
the
right, well then I'm sorry I wasted your time with that.
No,
with that
you have
comment,
your
but
opinion,
I-
it's valid.
I just wondered how anybody else thought. Anyway, I was very happy to see you mention the one thing that you wrote. You'll see that I put in my comments, but that you made me happy, was that you mentioned not only that you used Chicago Manual of Style, but you emphasized the reason why we need a manual of style, and it's that consistency. That in a professional work and an academic work, there should be consistency of style in the footnotes and in the bibliography.
Yes.
You didn't quite achieve it. I know it's extremely complicated when you're getting it from so many different sources. There were a few things I saw, but overall, it looked like the bibliography looked uniform. And that's important. There's a couple things that I caught here and there, but one time I think you had somebody's first name first and alphabetized it by the first name. I could be wrong about that because people have unusual names, so I'm not too sure. But I was happy to see that. I'm trying to think of the other thing that I was going to say that I really enjoyed and really appreciate that you wrote. There's a note in it. The text, what I was starting out to say is the texts are well chosen. I think you covered a broad spectrum of topics and covered it well with pieces from here and there without keeping it short enough that one could actually read it. And that was good. I'm frustrated by one thing, but this is me and not you. I thought finally I'm going to get a definition of that I can understand of what blockchain is and how it works. And nope, I still have no idea how blockchain functions, but that's okay. I guess I don't need to know that. But I appreciated that you included a glossary,
yes.
and that they were not your definitions, but rather
definitely
you gave the sources for that.
I wouldn't dare.
and that was well done. I was a little surprised you didn't alphabetize them, but it doesn't really matter. It's a short glossary. It's easy to find what you wanted. So I like that. I liked your story. I enjoyed reading your story of how you chose each of those texts. how you chose the chapters that you were going to use, because you didn't use all the chapters in the book, and you had it in order, and you gave a narrative of how that worked, rather than just saying, I liked this chapter, so I chose it. But actually giving some reasons. But there's something I think you need to work on in. And so overall, I was very pleased with your preface. I think it's something you need to go back and look at, because I discovered that, again, I was confused not for very long, but I soon figured out what you were talking about. When you were listing the choices, there were some inconsistencies in there. For instance, you said the first chapter. Now, I figured that out quite soon, but usually when I hear the phrase the first chapter, I think chapter 1. But that's not the way it was. And throughout, I think it would have been more helpful if when you were saying as I chose chapter 2 or I chose chapter 43 or whatever, you use chapter then. And if when you're talking about my first, my second, my third, my fourth, my fifth, how many was it? 9, 10? I don't remember. But if you had said my first election rather than my first chapter and my second chapter, my third chapter, just to make it clearer. Yeah. There were 2 places, and they're in my notes that I will send to you, where you said that another section this one choice was another section within that chapter. In one place that I know it, I'm not seeing the whole thing, so I don't know where the sections are, but I know there's one time when it wasn't, because one that you said was a section of chapter like 42 or so. It was actually, that was chapter 43. And so you slipped up a couple of times on that, I think. So I marked all of those for you to check them. When you were giving your own numbers, this was my 4th choice, my 5th choice, my 6th choice, the 6th chapter, whatever, you actually left out 6. So one time, maybe when you said something was a section of the previous one, it may have been actually that was your number 6 that wasn't in. So just, I think that needs to be straightened out. But I left notes on it in the margins. Now, I just want to I want to talk about just 3 issues, and that was the first one. Tedious but necessary is my note on that. Fixing up that part of the preface is tedious, but it will clear it up. And since that's a part of the preface of your thesis that gets published, you'll want to be as clear as possible. But then I have 2 questions that I want my colleagues to help me with, because I'm not a native Spanish speaker. So if I'm understanding things incorrectly, I'd like some help. One is a linguistic question, and one is a philosophical question. So I'm going to see if I can find. The linguistic one is about the phrase en modo alguno. And if you want to find that, that's in the translation, that's 47, page 47 of the overall doc, page 18 of the translation, and it's on page page.
Hold on, because my computer is very slow.
Okay. I marked it in the text, and I just need to find where it is. I can read it to you. It's very short.
You said page on the thesis 7. The number, the actual number.
For this one, for the linguistic one, the number on the entire document, which includes the 23 or the 29 pages of the page number that my computer gives is 47. The page numbers on the translation at the bottom of the page is 18. And in this one, it's, oh, found the wrong one, on the philosophical one.
Okay.
Page number, and I told you was right, but
What
okay.
was the phrase?
I'm sorry?
What was the phrase?
Phrase is in modo alguno. This sentence here, this is one of those where the page where the
¿En qué?
footnotes are in the middle of the quotation.
¿En qué?
I'm
En
sorry.
modo alguno.
En modo alguno. It says, probablemente especial. This is
I found it.
Okay.
It's gonna be in chapter 9, section 3, and it will be 1, 2, approximately 3 paragraphs. It's going to begin with, give me 1 second so I can better direct the audience.
I guess the next.
Yeah, this is right in the quote. Okay, in the.
Let's see here. You know.
It means in no way.
It's in that quote that's in the smaller print. But I think I can read you to the part that's pertinent. We have footnotes 7 and 8 in the middle of the page. And this is below those 2 footnotes, 7 and 8.
I found it. I have it.
Okay.
Okay, so it says idiosyncrasy. This is the people who are web users, and whether we are looking at their idiosyncrasies or whether we're using them as representatives of the entire web user world. But it says la idiosincrasia del participante a través de las nuevas tecnologías, puesto que es más que posible que en modo alguno reproduzca transversalmente el perfil del cuerpo social.
And that's page 18 at the top of the page. In the translated text, that's page 18 at the top.
Yes,
okay. I was just clarifying.
Yes, it's page 18 of the translation. Since you have it there, could you maybe read that just that little bit that has puesto que es más que posible que en modo alguno, and that's referring to the nerds, the geeks, the freaks, and it's saying whether it's possible that they represent the whole group correctly. So how did you have it, Tamika?
In any way.
What?
In any way.
Okay, in any way. But there's no negative there. Now, am I mistaken? To me, en modo alguno means means idiomatically in no way. Right? I understood what Tamika wrote as the opposite. And to my logic, yes, if you're going to say in any way, that means the positive. And that is one of the definitions that I found online for the phrase in any way. But I really think it's in no way.
No way.
So it's saying that it's more than possible that this freak or geek or the talkative members of the web denizens, it's possible that they don't in the least represent the profile of the social body. So I was wanting to confirm that because I am not a native Spanish speaker. That was what I understood.
Mhm.
I understood Tamika's translation the opposite way. So I want to know whether I'm reading it wrong or whether you can.
No, that's correct. That's correct. I just want to say something about that. It seems as if that's a long quote there you have there, Tamika. That should be indented.
Yes,
I marked that.
Okay.
I did too. It should be a block quote
It's a block quote.
Okay.
or an excerpt or whatever, right? It is. So, and you didn't have quotation marks either, if I recall correctly, so we didn't have any real indication that that was.
It shouldn't be in quotation. It shouldn't be in quotation marks.
Right, but it wasn't in a block.
Yes,
So-
it should be in a block.
Okay, so.
yeah.
That's a formatting thing, but we have to use the English conventions when we're translating into English, so.
Mhm.
Okay, all right, now the philosophical one, I hope this is easier to find than the other. It's very close to the beginning. It's a statement about, it's a little phrase that's in there in the source text about robots, about what makes you a robot. So that's the one that's top of page 4 of my source text. It's there's before on the previous page, there's a section labeled.
Does it have a page number?
Oh, the source text doesn't have page numbers, but there's a number before on the previous page. It says 118.
No, but what is the page number in the thesis?
In the thesis, I will tell you that in just a moment. In the thesis, that is page 4 of the translation of where the translation begins.
Thank you.
So where I'm reading it from is the 4th page of that. It's following the 118. It's right after the list of sensores que vigilan el entorno y detectan cambios. It's right below a numbered list of 3 items that a robot should have. Sensores, procesadores, and actuadores. And I don't remember how those were all translated, but sensors and.
Okay, that is chapter 4 under and that's under section 2.1 concept. And and you said in the
Oh yeah, it's concept, but it's a couple pages after that.
okay.
It's after the numbered list 1, 2, 3.
Okay.
Right. It's in a paragraph that begins with un artilugio, which was a new word for me. Un artilugio no actúa y por lo tanto no es un robot. Simplemente proporcionando información en un formato digital. Debe ser de alguna manera. And it has ser in italics.
Okay.
All right, now do you have your English? Does
Yes.
somebody have the English
Yes, I did.
there?
Let's see. Give me one moment. Making sure.
It's not a standalone sentence in your translation. You included it in the previous sentence, so don't look for one short sentence. Next time we do this, I've got to make a PowerPoint. That would make it so much easier.
You're talking about the sentence, a device does not perform as a robot simply by providing information.
I'm talking about that following sentence, that little short sentence, but I think she included it in the previous one. Debe ser. Ser in italics. De alguna manera.
Yeah, that's the short sentence. A device does not perform as a robot simply by providing information in a digital format. although it should be somehow.
That's not, that's
Okay.
not what it means. That's incorrect.
That's what I'm thinking, but I don't know how to translate it. Because I think
It
that's fair, the
what I-
fact that it's,
What I suggested was by providing information in a digital format, period, it should somehow be italicized.
okay. That's a possibility, definitely. And
Yeah, but that's
But I
it's-
think
the,
that
the
short
author
sentence-
italicizes ser specifically
it
to
needs to
emphasize
be.
the to be, the verb to be.
Okay.
So I almost wanted to write, it has to be alive somehow, which is more than what he's saying. So I was not happy with it, but it needs to be
Italicized.
sentient in some way. It needs to be present. It needs to be aware in some way. Be, yes.
It must be.
But I think that sentence needs to be all by itself, just as it is in the source text,
It is.
and be given that emphasis. And I felt like maybe you didn't see the italics, or so. Anyhow, I thought that was important, and that I needed to have the corroboration here from my colleagues of. And yeah, I guess it must be in some sense. In some sense, it must be. In some way, it must be.
Yes, it has to be italicized. The B has to be italicized.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
So-
I've written it's on my suggestions, so you will get
Okay.
my suggestions.
All right. Well, then I have a bunch of other little things, but those were the three things I wanted to talk about. To see if we're all on the same page on those. So, thank you for some very interesting reading. I found this difficult to read in several ways, but very worthwhile. And I think overall your translation was quite good. You mentioned the different styles, and along with those different styles of writing, somebody in there just loves really long sentences. And once or twice you got kind of lost in one of those long sentences. I remember one where you cut it into 3 sentences and ended up creating 2 sentence fragments, and you talked about how there were sentence fragments. The original wasn't, but I understand perfectly why you wanted to do that. So you slipped up a couple times there. I think you just got lost in those sentences. But in general, you did really well. You are capable of writing a clear, long sentence, and not everybody is. So I was pleased with this. And again, impressed with your work, with your hard work. And yes, that's all I'll say for now.
Thank you.
And I'll pass it on to Luis.
Well, vamos a ver. I don't know where to begin. I think I'm gonna begin like I thought I was gonna begin. Why? Why? Why you choose a difficult text? It's not a requirement for your graduation.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Why?
I didn't know it was difficult.
Why you
So I-
choose
I didn't
text
know
by
it would be
authors
difficult.
that don't only have 2 last names, they have 4 last names.
Right.
That should give you a clue to run away from them.
Yes, I looked at that name a lot of times.
It's you might as well have translated the Nueva Gramática. Oh my goodness. This doesn't mean I didn't like the selection of text. Well, I like the text you selected. I didn't like the selection of texts, which is different. First of all, thank you for inviting me to be part of this committee. I just wanted to ask why. there's not a requirement for suffering in this exercise. So please, students that are watching this, avoid suffering. Be Buddhist in that sense. And choose texts that you enjoy and are easy to translate.
I'm with her on that one. You never know how hard something is until you're doing it, till you're translating
Yes,
it. And then
yes,
it's too late sometimes.
It's Spaniards writing Spanish, and it's
Yes.
very old Spaniards. Not all of them, but I think the first author, or I think the editor, I don't remember which one. It's a pretty renowned professor, and they would tend to write long sentences and paragraphs. Your assertion is a word. I'm not sure. Your aseveración on the writing style, that it's rough. I quite don't agree. I think it needed a little bit of editing, and it needed editing, not a little bit. It needed editing because there were quite a few. There were quite a few sentences which had problems in them, and there's one example that I probably won't discuss here, but it's I just had to guess what the author wanted to say, because there's a concordance problem between verbs and names, and I don't know what he's talking about, and it's difficult, but yeah, but for the most part, the concept of run-on sentences is foreign to Spanish. It is. It's a concept from the English. I learned it when I remember I learned it in English class in school, and it's something that's never talked about in Spanish class. Because with the good use of your linguistic resources that Spanish has, you can write pretty long sentences that you eventually make sense of them. So I don't agree with your assertion that it's rough. I think it needs some editing. It's the first example you gave on your presentation. I don't think it's choppy. I think that's normal Spanish. Not normal spoken Spanish, but normal Spanish. And something what I was saying about why I don't feel completely happy with the choices you made of the text you selected is that I don't find, even though what Jane says that there's kind of like a progression, I don't understand how you chose it seems pretty random, and I think it doesn't help the purpose of your translation, which you were talking about creating a blueprint for a very important information. I think that it would have been better for that purpose to just focus in a selection of one chapter that really you could concentrate on and just translate it. I know chapters are very long because I was looking around trying to see if there was something I could suggest, but I think it would have served your purpose of divulgar, disseminating this information if you had stuck to one specific text. I think you, especially at the end, it's just like jumping around. I want to talk about this. I want to talk
Okay,
about
more so, yeah.
it's not that it's not interesting what you chose, but I don't think it does a favor towards your purpose.
I just thought she was giving us a sampler.
Yes, but she says she wants to. She says she talks about the importance of the contents of this text and how the way it's important to be for it to be known.
Well,
And I think it would have been
blueprint, if I may add, the blueprint that I was referring to was the original text. You know that it's the purpose of my translation was to spark interest, to direct them to the original text, you know, to read more. But because they were excerpts, I wanted to bring out highlights from the 992-page document to give samplers to the readers of the small excerpts. And it was quite difficult, you know. I didn't want to focus on one chapter and they're not seeing, okay, well, what about smart tourism, or how is this applied in society? So
I still think you should have focused in one, because not in all of the selections you did, but in at least 2 instances, maybe 3, I marked them. There were references to previous or further parts of the text which you did not translate, and it's like, so it's missing that information.
Yeah, that's
so yeah, don't try to bite off more. Then you can, and that would it help you with tackling one style of writing, concentrating, because for example, one thing that I did not understand from the text, and you did not discuss from that first article, is the use of uppercases. In Spanish, it's regulated. You're supposed, there's you go to the ortografía and it will tell you which words should go in uppercase. And this author seems there's some words that he capitalizes, and then some words with an adjective that the adjective is not capitalized. And why did he do that? Is this an editing problem? Because I can probably guess why this was not edited. You don't edit a text written by a person that with four last names. You don't do that. They won't allow it. So probably that's a reason. I mean, I wouldn't touch. That's written by Fulano. Nobody would dare touch that. So yeah. So, and then some of the examples you gave, like for example with gobernanza, I think you should stick to governance. I looked at a short article, which I did not validate, but I thought it was interesting, about how the word, it comes from French, the article says, and it kind of disappeared, and it sprung back up during the last century in Britain and in the United States. So it's a word that comes from English. So it should, I think you should stick to that. There's a difference, and when you discuss cliente and consumer, cliente y consumidor, there is actually a difference between cliente and consumidor. Okay, I can be a client, but not the consumer.
Mhm.
I can go to the store and buy 500 cases of Ensure, and I won't be the consumer. Probably it's my mother.
Yep.
But you won't
So
be
there's a difference between,
you won't be a client either. You'll be a customer.
a customer, yeah. So that's something that you should take a look at. The example you gave on, yeah, and there's also when you talk about regulación and normativa, there's a difference between la normativa y las normativas. Okay, las normativas and regulations probably are interchangeably, but la normativa, it's the law. It's actually the law in Spanish. So that's something I marked those in your text. And I wrote down your example on oversight. I disagree. What was your example on oversight? Because I forgot it.
Control. I decided to use oversight.
Yeah, which let me see, where was that? Because I did. Can you display your example so
Yes.
you can refresh my mind, please?
No problem. Moment, please.
Like, well, you look at it. For example, I marked in one of the parts of your preface. He said, in many instances, several studies in the text have yet to be translated into English, which means the research and studies conducted on a particular topic are limited to Spanish-speaking audiences. That would have been a nice selection criteria for your text, because it would help you focus on disseminating the information, which is one of your main goals.
Yes.
What is your issue with oversight? However, it's used,
I have to let me see the example because I don't remember.
Okay, but it's used all the time in terms of information and quality control. I mean, quality control is one thing, but oversight is, careful review and assuming responsibility in a very cautious and careful way.
Hold on, let me see, because I just wrote down.
The only thing about oversight is that it has the opposite meaning too.
Yes.
Right. That was an oversight.
I have the PDF. I was looking for the. Okay.
Sí, el control político, ¿is that the one? El control político no corresponde a la posición.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Is that the one? The example?
Political.
Political oversight not only involves the position, but also citizens. Is that the one, the example you showed?
Let me see.
Hold on, there's an emergency in my building. I need to come back because the fire alarm is on and I have to make sure I don't get burned here. So I'll be back.
Okay. Maybe we can take a 3-minute break.
That works.
Is that okay, Jane?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, information oversight is one of them. Ejercer control sobre los responsables de exercising oversight over those. I don't see in either one of those cases.
No, so I think espérate, a ver.
I mean, there's a typo there for ciudadanos. That's what I.
Where's oversight?
But I don't, in either one of those cases, I can't see what else you would use because supervision or control would not work.
No, so I don't know why.
You may have saw it in my preface at the control político. I think
No, it's right after normativa regulación discussion. I wrote it down, so it's. But anyway, that's not the example that I actually marked in your text. It's on page 4 of your translation. Political oversight not only involves opposition. The original.
Yes.
This was one of the examples I think you gave in your preface.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see. What's the page? Chapter? No, 2 point.
On the preface, it's going to be
Yeah, on the original text.
El control político, ¿no?
El control político no solo corresponde a la oposición, sino que los ciudadanos tendrán a su disposición instrumentos para verificar con facilidad, blah, blah, blah. You said political oversight not only involves opposition. Okay? I think this is very Spanish politics purposed. El control político no solo corresponde a la oposición. It doesn't have to do with opposing. Es la oposición. It's the opposing party. So they're talking about political control from parties. So that's why you need to have it. I think in that instance it should be political control. Bueno, yeah, political control does not correspond only to the opposing parties.
But citizens should also have instruments at their disposal.
Yeah. No, fíjate. No, I'm sorry. This is here political oversight did not mark. Here it actually works. It's one of those examples. Why did I?
Well, there are only 2 examples.
Just forget it. I don't remember why I jot that down. So yeah, it's political. Here oversight works correctly. Here it's good. It's the opposition that needs to be fixed.
Okay.
Yes.
And yeah, and then there's other. This is the only one example I'm going to talk about translation errors, because I don't want to bore everybody with these. But a little bit before that, the previous paragraph, it becomes difficult.
Tamika, I just want to say in terms of, there was something that you gave in your presentation that I think was a mistranslation, because you talk about the future, and let me go to where that was.
Pull it back up if you would like.
I have it. I'm looking at it. And yeah, that part, and it's, let me see what page it's on, because this will be in your translation as well. It's page 7. Aunque en Europa la protección de datos se mantuvo dentro del contexto de los derechos fundamentales, at the end of that, it says, afirmando una tendencia que está presente y que se ha reforzado aún más en los últimos años. That's a past tense.
Past tense, yeah.
Definitely. It has been in force even more so in recent years.
Yeah,
That should be a past tense, compound past.
got it.
Mhm.
And
There's I'm not gonna look for that example. There's instances where in the Spanish text, the author explains things to facilitate the reader in English, and you don't need to do that in English. For example, wearables, you said you put technological clothing, wearables. What the author is trying to do in Spanish is just use wearables and explain to the reader that this is like technological clothing. Rovers is another example. He explains what
Right.
rovers are. So those you can just go ahead and just cut that out
Okay.
and just go say rovers and wearables. TCP/IP, you don't need to explicitate. TCP/IP is what everybody uses. There's another instance where he talks about the voice over IP.
Mhm.
You kind of like mistranslated that, I noted. And there's many instances in the footnotes that you forgot to add the C. It's different when you have a reference to quotation from compared to when you want the reader to further explore a subject.
Yes.
And there's many instances where they used C.
Yes.
Sometimes you used it, sometimes you didn't. Bueno, I cannot find the example. I'm not going to waste time with that, but there's many instances where the wording of Spanish, and Jane talked about that, doesn't help you to the structure of the Spanish language doesn't help you to understand what they're saying. So you make some mistranslations, and the strategy I use is just to break things apart. I also use, which helped me a lot unravel some of these confusing sentences. I also use DeepL to help me with the translation. So I actually copied the text, translated with DeepL, and just modified it to fit either the way you were writing the text, so I didn't interfere with your style, or with whatever, fixing whatever error I could find. There was one instance of one footnote which was cut.
Google Translate. I mean, you can compare. If you have, if something is unclear, you can always plug in the, not that we suggest that you use Google Translate to do your entire thesis, but as a comparison, if something is unclear, sometimes actually it'll come out worse, but
DeepL is very impressive.
I diagram sentences.
Yeah.
Not every
What?
sentence, but when I've got a sentence that I can't figure out, now I usually do it in my head, not on paper.
Or reading
But
it out loud. Reading it out loud as well.
Yes.
Yeah, but for the most part, with this complex Spanish structures, it's just a matter of taking it apart into pieces and then reassembling it back. And even in Spanish, just moving the syntax around and making an easier to understand syntax, and then translating, it also helps you out. And that also an automatic translation tool like DeepL can also help you with that.
Yes.
Let me see. A ver, ¿qué más? Yeah, this whole paragraph on page 14 on internal and external security of applications.
Oh my. Yeah.
It was very difficult.
I had trouble following that.
It's a difficult. It it was very bad because it was difficult to follow.
I actually felt like they were not necessarily writing for publication. They were writing formally
They
for
were,
the most part, but it was just kind of brainstorm session on paper.
yeah, they were writing for themselves
And maybe each
welcome
other.
to Spanish writers.
and writing for their mirror image, their reflection in the mirror.
Yeah, there's a on page 24 that Satya and Adela footnote. It's missing a whole piece of text. I just copied it here. Most of it is it's a direct quote. So and then I think the only one instance that you made a comment, it's about RED.ES. You parenthesized an explanation for that. That should be either on brackets or as a footnote, as a translator's note. Yeah, but apart from that, and for my I'm not happy you're choosing so many texts, and happy. This was very difficult to translate. And mostly you did a very good job, considering the difficulty of the text. So yeah, please don't choose difficult text for your thesis.
Too late.
I'm gonna say if we could possibly wrap up the comments. If only for our Luis.
No, I'm done. This is the last thing I was going to say.
Because we have another defense after this, so.
I know we do.
Yeah. Thanks a lot. Anyway, so Barbara, are you there? Barbara.
Oh no, I cannot
Yes.
stop.
I think that we're ready to escort Tamika out of the room so that the three of us can convene. That you've done a very, very good job, and that we've decided to give you the grade of notable for this project. So and now you are a maestra.
Congratulations.
You're a colleague now, not a student.
So congratulations, Tamika.
Thank you so much. My mic was on mute. Gracias. Thank you.
Wish I could give you a hug. Yeah.
Yeah, you're very welcome. It was very hard reading this, but I liked it.
Yeah.
This was, Tamika, I agree with Luis. I don't know why you chose this, but that's, it'll be the hardest thing that you'll probably ever have to do in terms of translation.
Hopefully.
Yes.
And you did it.
So anyway, congratulations.
You did it, and you did a really good job. So,
Thank you, Dr. Auerbach, for guiding me and being my advisor through this process. So as much of it was painful, I'm sure it was for you, for me. I enjoyed it, which is kind of weird, but I like the subject matter. But yes, it was difficult. And now realizing in this form that it was complex, it makes me feel a little better. But it was still a challenge. And hopefully it is the most challenging thing I translate as I go through.
I'm sure it won't, but you have now all the tools you need to tackle anything that comes across. So
yes, you have the
credential.
Thank you.
So you get respect.
Okay. Yes. No. I tremendous respect for all of the work that you've done.
Yes.
And so I think we have to take a photograph, don't we?
yeah, we'll have to say goodbye to our
I'm sorry,
internet public.
For our television audience out there. Thank you for stopping by. And you know, we're all very proud of Tamika here today,
Yes.
for doing a great job. So, I think